Hi everyone, welcome back to my series The Decades of Action Challenge, which is inspired by a series conducted by Forkerball and Razorwire Reviews on their YouTube channels called The Epic Film Challenge. They're looking at a book called 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, selecting different entries from that book, watching the films, making videos about them. My source material is a little different. I'm going off of a series of essays by Tom Breihan on avclub.com called A History of Violence. The series basically is devoted to selecting and writing about the most important action movie of each year, starting with 1968 and moving forward all the way to this year, probably. We'll see whether or not Breihan picks something for 2017, but I'm betting that he will. Anyway, I'm on to 95 right now, and this is actually going to be a double feature week. I'm going to be doing two videos this week because I was a week late on reviewing Die Hard from 1988. And it's really the perfect time to do that because both 1995's selection and 1996's selection by Breihan are by the same director, Michael Bay. Michael Bay, up until 1995, had directed a lot of television commercials and music videos, most notably Meatloaf. I would do anything for love. That's one of his music videos. He did Wilson Phillips' You Won't See Me Cry. After he'd made a couple of feature films, he did an Aerosmith video called Falling in Love Is So Hard in the Knees, in which at the end of the video the camera goes like right into Steven Tyler's mouth. He's got a style of his own, a distinctive style that not everyone likes, but everyone can recognize fairly easily. Since making his feature film debut with Bad Boys in 1995, he's gone on to do 5 Transformers movies, as well as a few others. So let's get into Bad Boys. His first feature film, Michael Bay's first feature film, and this was originally not going to be an action movie per se. It was supposed to be a comedy, from what we can gather from rumors, starring Dana Carvey and John Lovitz, and it involved 2 cops, basically, one of whom has to pretend to be the other one for the sake of keeping a witness. The finished film retains this plot. I can't, this is not gospel right here, you know, I'm just sort of basing this on the fact that there is a sort of mistaken identity plot in the movie that really doesn't seem to fit with anything else. You have a situation where the Will Smith character, we have 2 Miami vice cops played by Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And they are they've scored a big bust recently. They've got a ton of heroin stored in their evidence locker in their precinct. At the very beginning of the movie, the precinct gets broken into by some very bad guys who steal all the heroin, the cops have to try and track it down. They have to figure out who stole it and get it back, or else they're all going to be in huge trouble. And in doing so, what happens is the way the plot grinds through, one of the guys who stole the heroin takes a little bit for himself and throws himself a little party and invites some call girls over, one of whom brings her friend. This call girl basically brings her best friend, who isn't a call girl, but she goes with her anyway, just, you know, for a laugh, I guess. That character is played by Leoni. The drug dealers show up looking for the missing brick of heroin. They shoot the guy that stole it. They shoot the friend. Leoni sees everything. She runs. They're after her, and so she needs police protection. And she knows that the Will Smith character is a friend of her friend who got shot, and she only wants to talk to him about it. She doesn't want to talk to anybody except the Will Smith character because she feels she can't trust anyone else. And so, who answers the phone, of course, when she calls, but Martin Lawrence, and his captain, played by Joe Pantoliano, is like, no, you've got to pretend to be him, okay? She's going to blow town. We're going to have nothing, okay? We need this witness. We need her very badly. So pretend to be Will Smith. And this is where the whole comedy of the movie comes into it. Obviously, both Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are comedic actors. They were both on sitcoms. I can't remember the name of Martin Lawrence's show, but Will Smith, of course, was on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And Martin Lawrence is a stand-up comedian. He did a special called You So Crazy, which is really, really funny if you can track that down. So the two of them basically are in this comical situation, but Martin Lawrence really gets the lion's share of the comedy because he's the guy who has to lie constantly and pretend to be this smooth operator that Will Smith is, when in fact he's just kind of a bumbling family man with a wife and 3 kids, and dealing with all that in addition to, you know, constantly being shown up by Will Smith. They're actually lifelong friends. They grew up in the same neighborhood. They've been friends since they were little kids. Now they're partners together, and, you know, Martin Lawrence character always feels a little in Will Smith's shadow because Will Smith is so much stylish. It's funny, I was just thinking this is sort of like an inversion of Lethal Weapon, because you've got the one guy who's single and the other guy who's got a wife and kids, but the single guy in this case is like super rich, and he's got a great apartment, and he's got nice clothes, and he's got a really great ride, whereas Mel Gibson in the first Lethal Weapon movie is basically living in a dump. You know, he doesn't have a lot of anything. So the two of them, basically, they've got different styles, but they're the closest of friends. And you know, they give each other a guff all the time, as the closest of friends do, but they love each other, you know, they got each other's back. So when this situation comes up, Will Smith, of course, has to, you know, try and pretend to be Martin Lawrence for the few moments that he's around Teo Leoni. But for the most part, though, the burden of the deception falls on Martin Lawrence, and he's not a good liar. His character is not a good liar at all. So that's where a lot of the comedy comes from. I didn't say this movie was funny, because it only occasionally is funny, but the comedy is very prominent in this. In addition to that, you've got a lot of gangsters running around, shooting the place up, and Smith and Lawrence having to shoot their way out of situations and causing all kinds of destruction. And there are 2 big reasons why Breihan picked this movie. The first is that you've got 2 main characters, and neither of them are white. You know, they're both black guys. You know, you could say this is sort of a precursor to Fast and the Furious, although, you know, the white guy in that movie is a very, very prominent character. But yes, this whole sort of multicultural group of people, especially when you get into, you know, parts 5 through the end. And so that was something that was new. You know, generally the major studio movies had at least, you know, 1 white main character. The other, of course, is being Michael Bay's style, the style that he brought to this movie. And not everyone would say it's a good thing, including Breihan himself. Breihan recognizes the influence of Michael Bay, and I certainly do as well. You look at the Underworld movies, and they look like Michael Bay movies. And when I looked at Michael Bay's first couple of movies, I couldn't help thinking that he had, like, combined, like, James Cameron and John Woo. You know, you've got the lighting of James Cameron, you've got the slow motion from John Woo, and these sort of mashed up, but not in a very sensible way. There's a couple of decent action scenes in this movie, but nothing really great. In fact, the bad guys seem to take a really long time to aim at the good guys, whereas the good guys pull out their guns and shoot, and they hit a bullseye every time. The bad guys not only miss a lot, but they also, like, wheel around in slow motion and point and point and point, and then there's a cut back to the hero, and then they cut back to that guy, and he's still pointing, trying to get a clean shot, and then finally they get shot and they die. That's kind of how a lot of the situations play out in Bad Boys. What did I like about this movie? I tell you, my favorite thing about this movie, my very favorite thing about this and pretty much any other Michael Bay movie, is the music that plays during the Columbia Pictures logo at the very beginning of the movie. You know, that's kind of a cool bit of music right there. After that, it's all downhill. That's sort of an exaggeration, because last year I saw 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, which is kind of a movie that didn't get a lot of attention when it first came out, but it's Michael Bay's best movie. It's a really good movie. It's all about, you know, the whole hubbub involving the Benghazi attack in 2012. It's a really good movie. So that's points in Michael Bay's favor. But for the most part, I really don't like him, and I don't like the way his style has infected a lot of other films. A lot of his action scenes are pretty incoherent. I think it's better watching them on a small screen rather than a big screen, because, you know, his style can be pretty overwhelming at times. But I don't hate Bad Boys. I just don't like it all that much. There's good things about it. You've got a lot of the acting is really fun. Marg Helgenberger, before she was on CSI, she's an internal affairs cop in this movie. Joe Pantoliano is their captain, the captain of the precinct. Will Smith's good, you know. I like Teo Leoni a lot. I've liked her in her shows and the other films that she's been in. And the funny thing about Teo Leoni's character is that she kind of has a good idea that Martin Lawrence is lying to her right from the very beginning. She's not a dumb bunny, but she kind of goes along with it, just saying, all right, whatever. And eventually, you know, they sort of admit to the fact that, yeah, you know, we've been trying to trick you this whole time. She's like, yeah, I kind of figured. And of course, that's, you know, when the really dangerous situation comes up. She gets kidnapped again. She gets handcuffed to a car again. You know, she has this great line about how terrible a week it's been for her since she saw her best friend get shot, and she's been chased by gangsters and dicked around by these two cops who are pretending to be each other. It's really, really ridiculous. Yeah. I know there was other stuff. I actually this is like my second take here, because there was a whole bunch of stuff that I forgot to mention the first time. I spent too much time talking about the next movie. Yeah, like I said, I don't hate this movie, but I really don't like it all that much. It's a dumb movie. It's not very well made. There's a big contrast, basically, in the scenes. I mean, obviously, dialogue scenes and action scenes are shot really differently. But the dialogue scene in this movie looked kind of like a Judd Apatow comedy, in which they just set up a couple of cameras, 2 or 3 cameras, and they just let the actors riff. According to Breihan, what he wrote in his essay, Michael Bay really didn't care for the dialogue in the script, so he followed the plot, but he basically let the actors kind of steer the ship as far as the dialogue itself goes. So there's a lot of improv. You know, a lot of riffing, and so those scenes go on for a while like they do in Apatow comedies. They just sort of let them, run through whatever funny versions of the scene they can, and then they go to the really quickly cut scenes of chasing and running around and shooting, and all the really exaggerated camera angles and slow motion and dramatic lighting and what have you. Yeah, so the tone the speed of the movie shifts from really fast to kind of easygoing to fast again and easygoing and back again over and over again. So this sort of whiplash effect, and some people are into that, you know. I'm not as much. I like a little bit more consistency. But yeah, it's a movie that's not terrible. It's just not all that good for me. However, that's nothing compared to the next movie Michael Bay made. And we'll get into that in the next video. When we talk about Breihan's pick for 1996, which is Michael Bay's second film, The Rock. Very, very popular movie. One that got him lots of, positive attention. So we'll talk about that next time. Like I said, this is a double feature week, so I'm posting these videos within a couple days of each other rather than a week apart. So you can expect that video on The Rock very soon. If you want to read Tom Breihan's article on Bad Boys, that is below in the description. The link to that is below. Also the link to my Facebook page and the playlist where you can see all the videos in this series. If you want to catch up on some of the older ones that I've done already. Starting with 1968, Bullet 1968, moving through the 70s, the 80s, now we're into the mid-90s, and in the next couple months it'll be the new century, and leading right up to last year and this. So thanks very much for watching. Appreciate it very much. And I'll see you in just a little bit.